Hello and welcome back to the DTF podcast. My name is Rob Dosser. I have John Fanta with me. I have Terrence Oglesby with me. It is currently Tuesday night, May 31st. You're going to be hearing this probably Wednesday morning, June 1st. We are now up against the deadline for the NBA draft withdrawal, and we have plenty to talk about with that. I did some studying. I did some research. I have some facts for you, Fanta. I have some facts for you, T.O. We're going to dive into all of that here in a little bit. But before we do, first and foremost, Fanta, man, you got some big news. I don't know if you shared it with the pod listeners yet.
Pod listeners, I'm an engaged man. Yes, someone signed on to life, not 4 years, life with me. Victoria and I are engaged. We got engaged earlier this month, just under 2 weeks ago, and she's still wearing that ring. We're wedding planning. First wedding planning meeting was tonight. It's in the books right before this podcast. We are pumped. Somehow they say that ring burns a hole in your pocket. I don't know how guys hang on to a wedding ring, to an engagement ring for a year or for a year and a half or for even 6 months or 3 months. I had that thing for 10 days. I had to get rid of it. She told me this after the fact. I went out of town for work for a week. And she went looking around the house trying to spot the bling. Luckily, I gave the ring to her dad, who hid it and kept it from her.
There we go.
Put it in his hands while I was out of town. I sure as heck wasn't bringing that thing on a plane. The point is, I do not know how you husbands that listen to us, for the guys who hung onto their ring for a year and a half or 2 years, how in the hell did you pull that off? Because I could not pull that off. And I'm a happily engaged man.
Well, first of all, congratulations to you,
yes.
Fanta. And second of all, it is a lifetime contract, but you could be placed on waivers in a hurry. So just keep that in mind too. Like, you can be placed on waivers in a hurry. So you got to still fulfill your end of the deal. It isn't just like sign the piece of paper, get paid your whole contract like Zion's about to have. Like, you gotta hold on to you got to hold on for dear life, because you will be placed on waivers.
Yeah, and this is ahead of you. This is ahead of you going to Serbia too.
That's true. Yeah. I'm going to Serbia pretty soon. That'll be a lot of fun. And that's if I can make my way through the Midwest without running into any Iowa fans, which would be good, because we got to fly through. We got to fly through Chicago. Okay, so long story short, we've been doing these draft previews for those who are listening, and I blasted Keegan Murray a little bit. Why? Because looking back, I kind of got irritated with myself after I went back and watched it, because I didn't explain it adequately enough. So what I was saying was, I said the words underwhelming athlete. Guys, he's a great athlete compared to most Iowans. I'm not taking away from the fact that he is the best Iowan athlete since Harrison Barnes. But guys, let's keep this.
Did you just double down?
I just doubled down. At Iowa, calm down. Stick to what you know. Wrestling, cauliflower ear, corn. Stick to those things. Okay, stick to what you know, Iowa. Basketball ain't it. Apparently, somebody said he was the best athlete to play in any game in the Big Ten all season. I'm like, have you seen Jaden Ivey? Let's get it together, Hawkeye Nation. It's ridiculous.
He's a top 8 pick in the NBA draft.
He's a very good player, Fanta. But here's what I was getting at. A lot of these guys are saying he's the best athlete ever. I was comparing his athleticism to the other top 4.
Who said that?
So whenever these crazy Hawkeyes with nothing else to do because they live in Iowa, they said that he's the best athlete on the planet. Hold on. I got to finish this, because I've been thinking on it. He's a very good athlete in regular life. But when we're comparing athleticism at the NBA level, these are the top of the top of the top. These are the most athletic people on the planet. When it comes to him being an athlete, he's a very good athlete. When it comes to him being an NBA athlete, he's a very normal person. That's what I was getting at. He can't create space on his own. These people ripped me. I'm mad at myself because I used the wrong word in saying underwhelming athlete. I should have put it in perspective, because context matters so much. And I did a poor job of explaining those things. But Iowa, stick to what you know. Stick to what you know.
T.O., my favorite part of that entire argument, that entire battle that you had with Iowa fans, is they were like, have you ever seen someone be the player of the year in a conference like the Big Ten and not be a good athlete? And I was like, yeah, his name is Luka Garza.
Yeah. No kidding.
Like, come on, man.
And a lot of the NBA players in the Big Ten, like not great at like Draymond Green. Is he a great athlete? No. He's a great NBA player, not a great athlete. But that's the only. But Fanta, Doster, this is the only negative thing I said. I said he wouldn't be able to create on his own.
I want to put this into context for you. I want to put this into context for you because your entire point, if you watch the whole video, I'll link it in the description so you IO fans can go find it. If you watch the whole video, if you listen to every single thing that you said in that full 12-minute long video, your point was Keegan Murray is going to be a good NBA player. Keegan Murray is going to play a long time in the NBA. He's going to make 9 figures in the NBA. He's going to spend 5, 8, 10 years averaging 12 to 15 points, which is an incredibly difficult thing to do. He is going to be one of the 100 best in the world at his craft, and that's probably the low end. Your point was, I don't think that he belongs in the same conversation as the top 4 guys in this draft because he doesn't have that same kind of MVP caliber ceiling like those other 5 guys do. That was T.O.'s point.
Where did he just did an Iowan just knock on his door?
That's what we call the Iowan goodbye right there. The Iowan goodbye.
Let me tell you, hey,
sorry.
Let me start this pod with a twist then, since we're talking a lot of draft. The 4 guys who people out there might be sitting here and saying are the top 4, the clear 4 guys. The more I watch him, the more I read, the more I look. I did research over the last couple hours. You're telling me that if you're one of those 4 teams, you don't think about it late at night, that guess what? I am buying the hype of Shaedon Sharpe. That just because the sample size is different doesn't mean I'm not thinking about it. I know you guys have talked about this in your previews, but the more you look at Shaedon Sharpe, the more I say, could be worth that pick that high, could be worth it because he could be a franchise player.
I would not take him over Jabari Smith because the more I watch Jabari tape, the more I think about it, the more I talk to people around the NBA. I think Jabari's shooting ability, his toughness, and the potential for him to be a small ball 5 at the next level, if he can get there, makes him be the kind of guy that I think can win you a series. I think he can. I
agree with you.
I think that there is very real potential for him to be like Paul George. And Paul George, for a while, was a top 5 player in the NBA. And I think that's what Jabari Smith can get to.
Yes.
I would be open to hearing arguments for Shaedon Sharpe over Paolo, over Chet, and over Jaden Ivey.
What about Keegan Murray? Would you pick him over Keegan?
Yeah, it depends on who's drafted. Because
it depends on where we are.
Yeah, if we're talking like, okay, look, we need a piece to be able to fit into the. We got all these guys, and it's kind of working, but we need some floor space, and we need a piece. Like, I think you can make the argument for Keegan Murray over Shaedon Sharpe. All that is to say, I think that there's a lot of really good players at the top of this draft. But to me, what's so fascinating about this draft is it's the first time in like forever that there is no kind of obvious number 1 pick.
Right.
Here's a thing that's mind blowing to me. Like it's a no brainer who the number 1 pick is going to be, or it should be. Like Paolo Banchero is so much more NBA ready. He is such a better scorer all around than the other 2 candidates, and even Jaden Ivey, who I'll throw into the mix just for the heck of it. But he's 6'10", 260. He's 6'10", 260. Fanta, you saw him in person. This dude is enormous. He's got great short, like small area quickness. He's going to benefit.
I'm more of the belief that Jabari Smith turns out to be a better scorer in the NBA than Paolo Banchero. Like I'm more in the Smith as a scorer than I am a Banchero as a scorer. I'm still concerned about Paolo Banchero's perimeter game.
Yeah, so I'm with both of you guys. I think the point that you made.
We took contradicting statements there. How could you be with both of us?
Because I think you're both right. I think Jabari Smith is going to end up being the better scorer long term. I think Paolo is the most NBA ready. I have very real concerns about the fact that Paolo shot 31% from 3 this past season. He's not a great shooter. Jabari is a great shooter, right? I have concerns about the fact that Paolo is not. We see all these comparisons to Chris Webber. You made this point, T.O. I think it was a brilliant point. Chris Webber was a basketball genius and one of the best passers we've ever seen out of the big man. Paolo's not that.
Paolo shot 34% from 3.
34% from 3. Okay. But he's not Jabari Smith.
Funny that The Ringer compared Paolo to C-Web. They did. Just
a lot of people made that comparison.
I don't agree with it. I don't like that one. C-Web was such a savant passing the ball. Like that was the whole thing. If you ever watch Chris Webber play with the Kings on that show before Mike Bibby got there and ruined that freaking Mike Bibby's a fine player, but like when they lost Jason Williams and they traded him directly for Mike Bibby and the Grizzlies, I have never been so hurt in my entire life as when that happened in 2002, I believe. 2001 or 2002. One of the worst days of my life was when Jason Williams was traded away from the Kings, but I digress. Chris Webber.
Theo, how many times did you try to do the elbow pass when you were going?
I did it all the time. I did the fake behind. I had a fake behind the back to a dunk. I'll put that on Twitter here.
You couldn't have done that in a game. You didn't pass.
It was in a game. It was in a Swedish game. It was in a Swedish league. It was in a pro league.
It wasn't an ACC game.
No, it wasn't. No, it wasn't. But no, Chris Webber was a great passer. Paolo Banchero is fine. I think his comparison, you need to kind of take his comparison with the evolution of basketball. These guys are just getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And the guy that I see, and I said this to Goodman, and he almost fell out of his chair. But I think he's like Paul Pierce. Look where he operates from. He's best about 15 to 17 feet out. That jump shot is good. It looks good. It's a little slow. It's got a small hitch in it. He's got good small area quickness. Paul Pierce was a very good athlete. When you saw him in person, he was deceptive with his athleticism. Paolo Banchero is that plus 4 inches. Now, is he the dog that Paul Pierce is? No. But go back and watch the film of Paul Pierce, where he scored, how he scored, how he attacked the defense, how he read feet. A lot of those things are very similar between the two. Now, obviously,
what's weird about this? You know what's weird about Paolo? I'm curious your take on this, CO, and you too, Fanta. I feel like Paolo has kind of become the modern day tweener, because to me, he is like a through and through 4-man, right? Yeah. He's a through and through power forward, and power forwards don't exist in the modern NBA. So he's like what a tweener is right now. Like, is he switchable? Can you play him at the 3? Can you have him guard 2s? Is he big enough to guard 5s? If you put him on Nikola Jokic or Joel Embiid or one of these other, or Giannis, is he going to be able to defend them? Can he be a rim protector? Can he shoot it from beyond the arc? He's kind of like a Karl Malone, right? And Karl Malone would not work in modern basketball. That is my biggest concern with him.
He hit what it is 44 threes.
But he was inconsistent from there at times and a little bit passive from there at times in key areas of games.
But he was a 53, 34, 73 guy. Like, that'll get better. Was he 18 years old? 6'10",
you know what he is?
255.
He is a reflection, and this is not who he is. So for the record, I'm not, because you guys, somebody would take this, like somebody from Iowa would take this the wrong way. So growing up, who did he watch? Who did he watch? He watched the King. He grows up, he watches LeBron James. So in his mind, his game has to be molded around the best of the best. And for me, guys, I don't know if his whole package, I think it translates in the immediate term. But when we're talking about 15-year pro that's doing it at this level, if you're going to be that type of player, you have to be the end-all, be-all, able to score in a variety of ways, do it over a long period of time. And that's what they're drafting on. So when you sit there and say he's the best, I think Paolo Banchero is the guy who has the best chance to impact the team immediately. But I think Jabari Smith has the best chance to both do it immediately on a level and level up as his career goes longer. The one I can't figure out is Chet. I can't figure it out because I love that he embraces physicality. But just because you love to embrace it throughout your entire basketball life, like you say with Keegan Murray, that the NBA athlete is different. Chet Holmgren, the NBA athlete is different. And I'm not convinced you can handle that game in and game out. And there's some people who might scoff at me for saying that. But I still have that concern. But for me, Paolo Banchero is someone who I think is going to make a living for a long time in the NBA. I'm not calling him a bust at all. But these are executives making decisions here that are based, their jobs hinge on this. I think Jabari's going one.
can we frame this conversation before anyone like clips this stuff out and gets mad at us? We're framing this conversation in the fact that we think all of these guys are at worst a top 4 pick in the draft, right? I think I would probably take Paolo number 2. I might be able to get convinced to take Jaden Ivey over him, but I'm probably taking him with the 2nd pick in the draft. I think he's very, very good. When it comes down to picking between these 3 guys, you have to start picking nits like this, right? You have to start breaking down what they don't do great. That's why we're having this conversation. I think I feel very confident saying that all 3 of us really, 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 really like and think that Chet, Jabari, Paolo, and Jaden Ivey, and Keegan Murray, for that matter, are all going to be very good NBA players. It's about figuring out where you want to
very good NBA players and get multiple contracts and make 9 figures worth of money.
Yes, they're going to make a ton of money.
And for the record, if Banchero falls to Houston at 3, which I think he will, because I think Jabari Smith is made for the Magic, fits their organization, the pick fits. I think the Thunder organizationally like to take shots and could take the shot on Chet. And then I think the Rockets at 3. Like, if you're the Rockets and you've got Jaylin Green and you're sitting there and Paolo Banchero's on the board, you might as well be picking 1 if you're Houston. If I'm a Rockets fan right now, I'm sitting there saying, yeah, Jabari and Chet are the best 2. Because if you're sitting there at 3, according to, and T.O., this is where I'm with you. Like, imagine if Paolo Banchero, who could turn out to be the very best, and that's what makes this draft is so fun, that he could be a Houston Rocket with Jaylin Green, who has only scratched the surface. Like, if he falls to 3, that for him is a big fall for the kind of talent he could be. Could Paolo Banchero be a generational talent in the NBA?
I will say this, Fanta. In 2017, there was a long conversation about who would you take number 1, Markelle Fultz, Lonzo Ball, or Jason Tatum. Jason Tatum, the guy from Duke that shot 34% from 3 as a freshman at Duke, fell to number 3, and look at what he's doing right now. I think you can make the argument if you were going to pick one person for the next 5 years in the NBA, where does Jason Tatum fall on that list? Pretty high up, right? So keep that in
over
mind.
The other
keep
2
this conversation in mind. It's interesting how some of these things kind of go, and it doesn't always end up being the number 1 pick ends up being the best player in the draft. Tio, you got any closing thoughts? You're the one that opened this up with your Keegan rant. You want to wrap this up for us?
Keegan Murray's a very good player, and he's a good athlete. And don't be surprised if Jaden Ivey jumps up above Chet.
Let me tell you something. The guy that I would take, I'm going bold here. Okay. I think that Benedict Mathurin could end up panning out better than any of the 4 guys we keep talking about. I'm serious. I think he's a guy that's going to get picked in the top 8 or 9. He should. If he falls beyond that, I think it's a crime. When I watch him on film, I am so impressed with the motor. He has all the things we look for in a prospect. There are some things that you look at and take out, and when we nitpick, we say, here's what we don't like. But guys, nobody's going to play harder than that kid. Nobody. He plays so hard. He plays strong. He is ready for the NBA and the physicality level, in my opinion.
My only concern is whether or not he has the individual ability to go get it on his own. Like, can he be the guy on a team? Because if you're drafting
in today's game, like he can be set up a little bit easier because of all the flow that they run in the NBA. Like, he can come off handoffs flying and using that athleticism.
Like, I would love him with Cade.
Did for it, huh?
I would love him with Cade Cunningham in Detroit.
I'm not mad at that. I wouldn't be mad at that at all.
Because it's also set up. None of us are going to deny you got to be in the right organizational setup. There's some organizations that are cesspools. And
Sacramento. Sorry.
They were cursed whenever they traded away Jason Williams, as I said.
Yeah. Yeah, look, I mean, there's no question. There are some organizations that are just flat out bad. If Mathurin gets taken by the right organization, and he's a great cutter, he's developed his shooting game, he defends. If he's set up with the right player, which look, that's half the NBA.
So that's a big point that you just said right there. If he's set up with the right player. That's the difference between him and what you would consider the top 4 picks, because those top 4 picks, they are going to be that
don't need
player.
the right player.
So that's kind of that's the differentiator.
You're betting on that.
What Mathurin, yeah, exactly right. So if I'm a GM, that's what I'm betting on. If I'm looking at a top 4 or 5 pick, I'm looking for an all-star, the guy who's going to be that player, right? My comparison, I don't know if you guys saw this, but he reminds me a lot of Jason Richardson. Used to play for the Warriors, played at Michigan State. Like,
I
same
like that
type
comparison.
body, big, strong body. He's a better shooter, much better shooter than Jason Richardson was. But at the same time, Jason Richardson played alongside some really good players. And because of his cutting ability, he developed into a better shooter later in his career. Because of his athleticism, he was able to utilize that because the NBA game goes a little bit faster. I thought that was somebody that you could compare him to, at least from a body profile.
Yep. The name that I was kind of thinking was someone like a Terrence Ross, a player like that, big time athlete, going to make some jump shots, going to be a good role player and a good piece. And I think that there's a chance if he figures it out and if he's able to do his own kind of stuff off the bounce and he's able to get that pull up game kind of perfected a little bit, then I think there's a chance that he could end up being better than that. I like him. I really like him.
One other thought, and we cover the college game throughout the year, but we have people who are going to be watching this draft, and on draft night, they might see the name pop up and they might not know as much about him because the casual fan's just not. But I can tell you right now, guys, back in December, I was able to spend 3 days with G League Ignite because I did a couple of games in Vegas. Mm-hmm. And we sat down with all the players. And the NBA has the commentators really take some time with the players, not only for us to grab some stories, but so that they can simulate some of the players, some of these kids, 18, 19 years old, getting interviewed by people and just how they interact. I will tell you right now, the 6'7" guard, the 19-year-old Dyson Daniels impressed me beyond his years. I didn't even, by the end of the conversation, I would have thought I was talking with one of you because he was so mature. He was unselfish with his teammates in practice, which this is Ignite. Frankly, it's a program to try to be able to get his draft as high as you can. He got it. He treated it like a professional. So Dyson Daniels, if your team picks him on draft night, he is Fanta approved because I think he's going to end up 9, 10, 11, 12, somewhere in there. I think he's in that range. I love his versatility. I think he makes plays for others. I think his shot is a little bit wonky. I think it's going to come along, and I think he defends, and he's willing to defend, which those Ignite players, some of them were just frankly unwilling to defend. Dyson Daniels is a guy on draft night that if he gets picked by your team around 12 or 13, I consider him to be a guy that will be a little raw at 19, but could prove to be a really solid pro.
So that's the Australian kid, right?
Yes, I am. He's from Australia. Super impressed with him.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about draft night a little bit because I went through and I was getting roasted for this a little bit in some of the group chats that we're in, but I went through and I did a study on all of the second round picks over the course of the last 10 years. I'm sitting here, I'm staring at a spreadsheet. I have every single second round pick and what their initial contract was coming out of the draft and what they got their first year in the professional ranks. And so the first thing that I want to mention, because I don't think people realize this, and I didn't realize this until I started diving into this, and I don't even know if you guys realize this. When two-way contracts were first set up, the way that it was basically structured was you got 75K or around 75, 80K by the time, like in the first couple of years. Mm-hmm. And you got bonuses for every day that you were on the NBA roster, right? And they set limits. Like if you spent more than 45 days on the NBA roster, you had to get the league minimum salary and all these other kind of things. They've changed that. If you get a two-way deal now, you're getting half of the league minimum, right? Right now, that ends up being $460,000. The league minimum this past season was $925K, give or take a couple dollars here or there. And you can play up to 50 games on an NBA roster, right? And once you get to that level, then you have to end up getting the league minimum, and you end up getting paid a little bit more. But essentially, it's $460,000 is what you get now if you get a two-way. Now, that money is not guaranteed, but as one front office guy said to me, if you have a good agent, you will get the full value. And most of these guys, if they're getting picked in the second round, have pretty good agents and they know what they're doing. So when we're talking about these second round picks, I want you to keep in mind, if you get a two-way deal right now coming out of this draft, you're probably getting somewhere close to a guaranteed $500K. It'll be like 480, 490 this year after the league minimum. That's the first thing that I wanted to mention. The second thing that I wanted to mention is that I don't think people realize how deep in the draft, like, you get those two-way deals, right? So the last 4 years, right? I ran the numbers. Last 4 years, 57 players got at least one guaranteed year of the league minimum salary, at least 1 year of that. And that was the minimum, right? 38 of those 57 got at least 2 years guaranteed, right? Out of the last 4 drafts. Another 34 got two-way contracts, which means 91% of the college players drafted in the second round over the course of the last 4 seasons got either at least one guaranteed season of at league minimum salary or a two-way contract, which would equal about $460,000 or $470,000. 91% of them in the last 4 years, right? Wow. And that number is going up. In 2017, there were 5 two-ways. In 2018, college players drafted in the second round got 5 two-ways in 2017 and 2018. The last 3 years, there have been 29 two-way contracts given out to college players that have been drafted in the second round. 6 guys got G League deals, right? That accounts for now 97 of the 100 college players drafted in the second round. Only 3 guys ended up not getting a deal that was to the G League, which I believe is now 6 figures if you're on a G League contract, right? A two-way or a guaranteed contract at the league minimum salary. One of those guys was Filip Petrushev, who played at Gonzaga, ended up going and playing in Serbia for a year, then was drafted and then went back to Serbia. He's Serbian. One was Justinian Jessup, who's from Colorado, who got a deal to go play in Australia. And the other was Tony Carr, who has a contract now to go play in Europe. And I'm sorry, there was one more. It was Balsa Koprivica from Florida State. Again, Serbian, went to go play his professional basketball in Serbia. I think that's part of the reason why he was picked where he was picked. All that is to say, you are getting really good money if you are drafted in the second round. So I want to keep that kind of context in mind when we have conversations about guys like Jaylin Williams. Oh, one more fact for you. The last 2 years, if you were picked in the top 50 of the draft and you were a college basketball player, 69% of them, 22 out of the 32 college players that were picked in the top 50 got at least 1 year of guaranteed money at the league minimum. 19 of the 32 that were picked, 59% got at least 2 years of guaranteed money. And there was only one top 50 pick that was a college player that was drafted that did not get a two-way or a year of guaranteed money and went straight to the G League. Do you guys know who that was? It was last season.
Top 50 pick.
It was the last draft. He was picked 49th by the Nets. He was Creighton points guard.
Marcus Zegarowski.
Marcus Zegarowski was picked 49th in 2021. Yes. He was the only guy picked in the top 50 in the last 2 years that came out of college that did not get a guaranteed deal or a two-way contract. So all of that information. And
by the way, league minimum again is
900. It's basically $1 million.
Right.
It's 900. The league minimum for a rookie is 900, and they haven't come out with the official numbers yet, but it's mid 900s, right? Which means that a two-way contract is going to be upper 400s.
Upper 400s.
Yeah, upper 400s.
Right. So you're saying there's something to still be said about getting drafted. That when we talk about when we talk about the balance between coming back to college and NIL versus getting drafted, if you can get drafted, you get drafted.
Yeah, if you could be a top 50 pick, then you're almost guaranteed to have a contract that's going to pay you nearly $500,000.
But what about
a lot of money?
Let me ask you this question. What about life of
And hold on, let me just plug this real quick. We are relaunching the Field of 68 newsletter. We're expanding it. We're going all in on it. We brought on the guy that hired me when I was at NBC. His name is Mike Miller. He's going to be running all of the Field of 68 newsletter content, and all of this information and all of this study is going to be rolled out over the course of the next 3 weeks in that newsletter. Make sure you subscribe. I'm going to have the link in the description of this podcast if you're listening on the audio feed, or it's going to be in this description of the YouTube channel, the YouTube description if you're watching on YouTube right now. So make sure you go and you sign up for that, because that newsletter is going to be where you get all of your information for college basketball. Sorry, Fanta, I had to plug that.
No, I'm just saying, what about the kid who could best be served by coming back to school and then getting the league minimum that you speak of, because some of these guys who could have gone that direction and elected to go straight to the league, they actually could hurt themselves in that capacity too, could they not?
Yeah, they could. There's always a risk, right? Like the Jaylin Williams is the guy I really wanted to talk about this with, is because he's the kid from Arkansas, right? He would have been an All-American this season. He would have been playing on an Arkansas team that has a chance to win, a very real chance to win a national title. I think that you can make a pretty coherent argument with Jaylin Williams that Arkansas is at minimum like a top 3, top 5 team in college basketball this year.
Arkansas ran out of salary cap space.
Well, yeah. Well, what I'm saying, if he comes back, well, part of the issue is, my understanding is the agent that he's with may or may not be NCAA certified, which could be problematic in terms of him coming back. I don't know if that was something that
that's very decision. Problematic.
That is problematic. But the long story is, or the short story is, he's the perfect example here, because if he comes back to Arkansas, I think you could be looking at a situation where he matches what he could have made this year in two-way money, assuming he would have been a top 50 pick in NIL stuff. And if he comes back and he adds the jump shot and he sheds a little bit of weight and he proves he's a little bit more switchable, then all of a sudden you're looking at a guy that I think has a real chance to be a first-round pick. So there is an added bonus and upside to coming back to school now, because you can offset it and make it not be a monetary deal, make it not be a monetary issue. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. Let me ask you this, because I'm sitting here watching this kid play, and I love the way he plays. And in a league that's filled to the brim with athletes, like, he's just such a nice little counter, and he manages his lack of athleticism with his ability to stay in front and take charges. And as we've seen in these playoffs, like, that is wildly effective, taking the charge and getting to spots early and being a great help defender, because nobody in the NBA can guard one-on-one. I love, like, how the scouting reports, like, for some of these guys are like, well, can he stay in front of really quick guards? Or, but that's just something you would hear. It's something I would hear. Can you stay in front of really quick guards? And can he guard somebody like a Russell Westbrook or Derrick Rose?
No,
I'm like, guys, nobody can guard these guys. Nobody can guard these guys. Like, you have to be a very good help defender, which is why Hummel got to play in the NBA for quite a few years, like, because he was a good help defender. But no, I'm.
We don't compliment Robbie.
I kind of watch him play, and he's a good passer. He just knows how to play. He can play around guys. Like, he obviously would have to find the right system. But what do you think doesn't translate for him?
The issue to me, it's kind of
he can't shoot the three.
Yeah, he shot 24% from three this season. As a freshman, he shot 30% from three.
Well, neither can Draymond Green.
But here's the thing about but he's not
a different type of talent. He's not ready for the NBA. He's not ready for the NBA. It would best serve him to come back to Arkansas, because if he comes back to Arkansas, it would be the most anticipated Arkansas basketball season in 3 decades. You come back, you don't have to have the pressure of being the man for your team. You could be that in some instances, but Arkansas's got a bunch of talent. They've had as good of an offseason as anybody in the sport of college basketball. Jaylin Williams should come back to college, make his dollars in college, and then get the minimum that Rob's talking about at the very least. He's one of those guys. Sometimes
all I was going to say is, my concern is I don't think that if I was one of the guys drafting, I don't think that I would take him and pay him that kind of guaranteed money. A couple of the front office people that I spoke to doing this research, they basically said, I think that there's going to be a team that will basically say, okay, we're going to give you a two-way. Whether that means he gets drafted, whether that means he goes undrafted and signs with one of those teams, his expectation was that he's probably going to end up getting a two-way deal. So I guess my view of him and the NBA's view of him differs a little bit. It seems like NBA guys seem to lean more towards you, Tio. And here's my thing. I think that there is potential there for him to be an NBA player down the road. I think in, like, shed a little weight, become a little bit more switchable, be someone that can guard a little bit more on the perimeter, improve that jump shot to the point where teams have to guard you. Right now, they don't have to guard you. His passing, his decision-making, his basketball IQ, all of that stuff is there. It's the stuff that beyond just the basketball IQ. You mentioned Draymond Green. Draymond Green is uber switchable. He's also a rim protector and someone that can block shots. He's also one of the best passers that you're ever going to find out of a big guy, one of the best decision makers, one of the highest IQ defenders on planet Earth, right? So I don't think
I would throw Jaylin Williams when it comes to defensive IQ. I would throw him up there.
He's a great defender. He's a great defender. But if you can't affect the game from the perimeter, you're going to be in for a long night.
Well, my argument falls apart. So the biggest reason I thought that he should come back was that he could make more money through NIL at Arkansas on a team where that fan base, which is insane and crazy and passionate and has money to spend, right? Where they were.
Shout out Tyson Chicken. Sorry.
Shout out Clint Sterner.
And they're already juiced for next season. Imagine if
fired up, man.
If Jaylin
Shout out Pat Bradley.
Williams had elected to come back. Yeah, no, if Jaylin Williams elects to come back, they might be the number one team in the country, and then everybody's getting paid. That whole team's getting paid. And who's on the front cover of the media guide? Who's on commercials locally? Who's on everything when you refer to Arkansas? Jaylin Williams. They're still going to be a really good team. And look, Jalen's got to do what's best for him. But your argument, to me, gets defeated because you can have the best of both worlds. Some guys can come back to college, get better. Not everybody's Wendell Moore Jr. Wendell had to take some criticism and feedback. He stayed the course at Duke. He could have lied to himself and said, I'm ready for it. But guess what? He came back to Duke and he got better as a player. And now I think he's an underrated NBA draft prospect.
Where's he projected? By
late first, early second. There's like 25 guys that are projected to go in like that 25 to 40 range. If you're
Jaylin
drafting,
Williams might not even get drafted in the top 35.
Yeah, there's a lot of really good like roles.
There's a lot of value and skill in some of these playoff teams. Just keep that in mind. Like, you got to swing for the fences early in the draft, but when you get later, that's when the managers pop off. That's when some of these high level skilled guys that aren't quite as athletic, that's where they get drafted. Like some of these undersized foremen that can play roles, Trevor Booker, like the back end of the first, like that's where skill is really valued.
That's why
back you go.
That's why a Dalen Terry says I'm going to the draft because somebody might be more prone to bet on a guy like that they know what he's going to come in and do for them. I'm sorry, but it's not a bad thing. When I hear someone say, oh, he's a role player in the NBA,
it's a good thing.
Yeah.
Championship teams have role players. That's a good thing. If you know who you are and know what you can do, that's a good thing in the league. If we don't know what you can do, I'm sorry, but go head over to McDonald's and fill out an application. We'll put you on a fryer.
Fun fact, I used to work the fryer at a Friendly's. That was my first job when I was 17 years old.
Did you wear the hat? Did you wear the hat?
They made me wear a hairnet, bro. I had to wear a hairnet, and I cooked at Friendly's. I was the fryer.
T.O., I'd pay $100 for a photo. Wouldn't you, Terrence?
The worst part, there's definitely no photos that exist. This was before Facebook. This was literally 21 years ago now. But it was, it was. I did it for one summer, and that summer I put on like 20 pounds because all I did was eat ice cream and bring home chicken, like buffalo chicken fingers.
You were
for dinner. And so then I was like, I'm not doing this again because I just got fat as hell. So the next summer I came home from college and I worked construction. And I was like, this is fucking worse, man. I gotta go back to Friendly's.
Now wait a minute.
Ice cream.
Did they have the window, where somebody could go up and order ice cream?
Yes. But I didn't do the ice cream, man. I did the grill. I made the chicken fingers. I made the steaks.
Friendly's?
Oh my God.
I'm just assuming it's like a Burger King.
I might walk out with that question.
Sit down. Come on. It's like if you took, it's like have you ever been to a Dairy Queen?
Better though. It's like if you took Applebee's and Dairy Queen.
Well, yeah. What I was gonna say is if you took Dairy Queen and you took Applebee's and you kind of like made a restaurant baby just like that. That's kind of what.
And you get free ice cream at the end of your meal.
Yeah, it's a sit down place where you order fast food, but they're known for their ice cream and they sell ice cream independently.
So it's like a Five Guys.
No, it's better. You sit down, you have waiters.
How dare you?
It's not better. It's not better. No, it's a sit. You have servers. You have servers.
The best burgers on the planet are at Five Guys, and I'm not even willing to debate with you.
Terrence,
there's a better burger, and it's not at Friendly's.
Okay,
Five Guys.
All right, when you come up northeast next year for your Big East 2-night caravan. Like you did this past season, and we went to that wonderful deli, right, in Connecticut, and we got
good about Connecticut.
You tried.
Oh my God!
You tried Frank Pepe's. Then you went to Gamble. You were up in the corner, which was amazing.
The nosebleeds, Doster.
That was hysterical.
Talk to her. Until next time, if I come back,
you're breaking up. So
you're breaking up. Can you fix your mic? You're over here in Trayce, Connecticut. No, you're coming through your AirPods now. You're coming through your AirPods.
Hold on. Sorry.
Yeah, unbelievable.
Goodman did that on a Goodman did that on an after dark.
This guy has the audacity.
Is that better?
There you go. Yeah. He has the audacity to come on here and slander the state of Connecticut, and my man can't even make his microphone work. Get out of here, bro.
I accidentally touched the button, so it switched to the button. So I don't want to hear this shit. You and your
Goodman did that
or whatever.
On After Dark. I thought Rob was going to kill him. Rob, I honestly thought you were going to kill him. He's literally on his AirPods. You can't hear every like fourth, fifth, and sixth word he says. You can't hear, and all you're seeing is like he was so fired up that night. The whole A block of the show, he's on his stupid AirPods.
I was on that show.
You and I were on it. We're like, this is, but you couldn't stop him.
Drove me crazy because it's Goodman. You can't tell him anything.
No, I hit the button. But anyway, Five Guys, delicious burger. I don't know what you're talking about.
That's not sponsored, by the way. So we're going to bleep out Five Guys until they
don't you dare bleep out Five Guys. Five Guys kept me going in keto diet this month.
Hey, true. All right. So we talked a little bit about Jaylin Williams, who was staying in the draft. I do want to mention some guys that are coming back.
Hard turn.
Trayce Jackson Davis. Well, I'm trying to keep us on track, man. It's a very difficult thing to do.
All right.
Trayce Jackson Davis is coming back to Indiana. Matthew Meyer is coming back to school. He's transferring to Illinois. North Carolina got their top 4 guys back. Creighton got everybody back and added Baylor Shireman. TCU, low key, might be the biggest winner out of everybody in this coming back carousel. And for the record right now, as we're recording this, Drew Timme, Trevor Keels, Marcus Sasser, David Roddy, Jules Bernard, Caleb Houston, Musa Diabate, Jalen Wilson, Kevin McCullough. Those guys have not yet made their decisions. That will happen before June 1st deadline. So
Justin
keep that
Lewis.
in mind as we're having this conversation. Oh yeah, Justin Lewis
love
as
that
well.
kid.
That's
I think he's look. I don't want to tell people what to do, but I think that he is a pro, and he probably needs to head on to the NBA and get one of his 2-way deals and get his $460,000. Yeah, exactly. Now, how many of those guys come from Marquette, by the way? Like
all those big, strong 3-4s.
Tough
like,
motherfucker.
Marquette,
tough motherfuckers.
Yeah.
Jimmy Butlers,
dude.
Like, tough motherfucker.
It's been a while. That's a program that has groomed pros, but their fan base right now would say we'll take an NCAA tournament win. I mean, they haven't won a tournament game in 10 years. I think Indiana's interesting.
I feel their pain, fans.
I know you do.
I feel their pain.
To me, I was looking at teams today. Like as Mike Woodson heads into his second year, Indiana's a Big Ten title contender.
Let's talk about that. Trayce is back.
It's huge.
You
have Race Thompson back for a 6th year, and he averaged 11 and 8 last year. Trayce Jackson Davis is a unicorn of a college talent. He is. When he's on the floor, he just juts out. He runs the floor like a deer, averaged 18 and 8 this past year. Defensively, he's a presence for his team. He plays so hard. And in terms of how you defend him, I think it's really difficult. In fact, I think he's as tough of an assignment in the Big Ten as there is. So for me, when you look at Indiana and you consider the fact they bring in a 5-star guard in Jalen Hood Schifino, plus Xavier Johnson, who comes back, he averaged over 5 assists per game this past year. It's not as if you have Hood Schifino coming in and he has to take everything on. No, they've got an established point guard that can make things happen for others. And who was the best defensive team, according to Ken Pom, in the Big Ten last season? The Indiana Hoosiers. Mike Woodson has a club that could win a Big Ten championship. And look, I don't care how you do it, what way you do it. If he could do that in his second year, that would be silencing a whole hell of a lot of critics that poured on Indiana. There are high expectations in Bloomington. That's good for the health of college basketball. But TJD coming back means that Indiana can win the Big Ten.
Yeah, they got that other 5-star kid. I'm not going to try to say his name for Montverde. Malik
Renaud.
Malik Renaud. Yeah, Malik Renaud. Tamar Bates, former top 25 5-star guy, coming back, should be better. Look, I'll tell you this, T.O. Greg Waddell, who does a lot of our social media stuff, does the production stuff for us, Sleepers Media guy, big Big Ten guy. He said to me the other day he thinks Indiana should be a top 10 team with Trayce Jackson back. And I was like, dude, what the fuck are you talking
I'm
about?
not mad at it. I'm not mad at it.
Have you been drinking? And my initial reaction was, Indiana top 10? Are you crazy? And then I went back and I looked. It's not that crazy. If they make shots, if Miller Kopp is making shots,
that's the key.
And Jalen Hood-Schifino are making shots. If those guys are making shots, that's a good team.
They got to
right,
make shots, and Miller Kopp, he's got to make shots this year at a higher rate. And then the guy that I really think could be that guy, he's had a year to get his feet under him there in Bloomington. I think Tamar Bates. I'm a fan. Big, strong body. He's going to have to hit more shots this season. Obviously, he's struggled from the field this year, but I think that freshman wall hit him pretty hard. He's got a lot of talent. He's got a smooth stroke. He's somebody who can knock down shots. I think this season he could be, your freshman to sophomore year, you're going to be able to see one of the biggest jumps in that league because of his talent level and because of Xavier Johnson. Every time you do that, Fanta, I think you're disagreeing with me. So it throws me off for half a second.
I agree with you.
It's the same thing when
you hit me. You hit me with the Fox News face. You hit me or Fox. Excuse me, Fox Sports. Fox Sports. Let me correct myself. Fox Sports face.
That's the Tucker Carlson.
Yeah, but it throws me off for a second.
Well, you know what you made me think. So you made me think. Like I think the Big Ten goes through some roster turnover, and we're looking at Michigan right now and whether or not Houston and Diabate, what their decisions are. As we do this podcast, we haven't heard those decisions. But to me, like, we could call it Indiana the front runner because we know what they've got. Mm-hmm. And frankly, I don't think it's been a great off season for the Big Ten thus far. Michigan State really has not done much, in my opinion.
Illinois has done well.
Illinois has done well, but they had major losses. They've done well. They're one of the winners. To me, one of the biggest questions is, what version of Matthew Mayer is Illinois getting?
Well, that's the thing. It's like there's
before we get to Illinois, before we do that, can we just say that I think Indiana's certainly a top 3 team in the Big Ten. Certainly.
Yeah, no, they are. I would peg them as favorite. I'd peg them as favorite.
I would peg them as favorite. As of right now, they're the favorites. And not only that, the only people they lost were their most inconsistent pieces. Okay, Christian Lander, right. Rob Fennessy, Parker Stewart, Michael Durr. They were the most inconsistent dudes they had on the team. All 4 of those guys are gone. And now you're bringing in some 5-star kids on the tail end of it. You get Tamar Bates, who's really, really good. In my opinion, it's taken him a while. I think they could very, very well win the Big Ten.
Can we talk? Because we don't know what's going on elsewhere in the league.
Yeah, but can we talk about Tamar Bates for a second? My man wears number 53.
I'm with you.
Oh, that's awesome.
He wears number 53. Like, on the one hand, like, what are you doing? But on the other hand, I kind of love it, right?
Oh, yeah.
He's going completely off script. How do you not love a dude that's who wears 50? Offensive linemen wear 53. You got to be a certain kind of
long
dude
snappers
to wear 53.
Long snappers wear 53.
Left guard, John Fanta, freshman team, Seton Hall Prep High School.
I wore 64 and I went to St. Ignatius High School in Cleveland.
St. Ignatius.
I was a terrible left guard.
First of all, powerhouse.
Yeah. And the coach told me after my second season, you're not made out for this football thing. Why don't you head up to the broadcast booth? There's some pizza up there. Let me tell you something.
Say that.
No, you know what he heard? He heard those pipes.
Terrence, that's exactly what he said. And it was the best advice I ever got.
No, that's great. That's such a good story.
Yeah, I went home to my mom. I told her that he had told me to stop playing, and I think she wanted to go down to the school and give him a piece of her mind. I said, "Mom, he's right. I stink." That said, 53 is great. 53. Bates just became my favorite player.
Yeah. I love it. 53? I love it. No one does. Tamar Bates does. That's it. He's the only guy. I do want to have this. We need to have this conversation about Illinois because they are. I don't know if there's a team that has a higher ceiling that also has a floor that could be like that team might win 3 games next year, man. Because if you look at it, right, Sky Clark, Terrence Shannon, Matthew Mayer, Coleman Hawkins, those 4 guys right there, if all of them are the best version of themselves, like all 4 of them could end up being NBA players, right? I don't think that that's something that's crazy to say. They also are 4 guys that are just good enough to be the best player on teams that can't win any games. And that it's so good
enough. My dad used to say this all the time. He used to say, good enough to get you beat.
Yes. That's 100% what they are. So if you have any idea what to expect from this Illinois team, go ahead. Please enlighten me, because I have no idea.
It's kind of crazy, but there's so much offensive versatility with that group now. Like, if you look at it, like, Sky Clark has to be really good. What's the kid? Jaden Epps is a good player too. Everybody, all the Illinois faithful are like, you're overlooking him. I'm like, I'm not sure I'm overlooking him, because I think he's a good player. But Sky Clark could be a difference maker his first year in the Big Ten, and there's not many that are in the Big Ten. So there's a lot of offensive versatility. Terrence Shannon's a good player, really good college player. It's just, how are you going to make all these pieces fit? And then one guys I really liked, and Rob, me and you watched him play at the Peach Jam last year. Ty Rodgers is a beast.
Yes,
he is a beast. I thought for sure he had the makings of looking like a Michigan State player, just because he is just so strong physically and everything like that. He is a really, really good player. And a guy that played at Baylor, another Baylor guy, Dane Danger.
He started center. Maybe
he was a really nice high school player that he's from the state of Minnesota, I believe.
Yes, he is. He's from the state of Minnesota.
And he has really long arms. He's got some good skill. He reminds me a little bit of a guy named Eli Thomas that played at Clemson a few years ago. Kind of the same build, same mold, motor, big guys. Yeah.
The problem is they don't have an alpha.
It's hard to know that, though. It's hard to know that, though, Fanta. It's hard to know that right now.
Well, when I look at them,
I think Terrence Shannon thinks he's an alpha. And that's like, if Terrence Shannon Terrence Shannon thinks he is the alpha.
Here's the problem with Terrence Shannon thing. When you're the alpha, you can't just be the alpha half the time. Mm-hmm. If you're the alpha of a team, you can't part-time alpha. You turn into beta real quick in everybody else's eyes, and then you have a conflict, and then, like, you can't be part-time alpha. You gotta go full-time alpha. That's Fanta. He's newly married.
You can't be part-time alpha. You got to bring your game every night, whether it's to the court or the bedroom. Like, you got to be a full-time alpha. You can't. You have to embrace the role. My point is, you're right. And this is why projections are only projections. But you can't sit here and say that Illinois is the best team in the Big Ten when they don't have the best player of Illinois or Indiana. Indiana does. Illinois, to me, is a quality team. But Terrence Shannon Jr. is part-time alpha. Matthew Mayer, his shooting percentage dropped over 8% from 2020-21 to 21-22. I'm so curious. I don't know what to expect from Matthew Mayer. And the fact is, Kofi Cockburn walks through that door, and you're going to miss him in so many ways, because if for nothing else, he gravitated so much attention. So look, there's going to be a lot on Sky Clark, and Clark and Shannon, if they can coexist and make each other better, then they'll be a pretty good basketball team. But we don't know how that's going to pan out.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of questions there. There's also a lot of potential there. So that might be the one team.
You could also see Underwood going back to his spread offense where you can pull a 5 away.
Yeah, 100%.
So like now you can see his coaching ability now that he's got a more versatile group. Coleman Hawkins, I called this before last season. He was wildly inconsistent last year, but man, you can see the potential, can't you, Rob?
Yeah, 100%. The guy that does our Illinois podcast, Deion Thomas, who's the all-time leading scorer at Illinois, a legend at that program, has been talking about him for like 2 years, just hyping this dude up. And when, I'm not going to say if, when Coleman Hawkins puts it all together, he's going to end up being a beast. But that's the same thing with Matthew Mayer. That's the same thing with Terry. That's my thing about Illinois. There's going to be games where they blow people out by 30, and you're like, holy shit, this team's winning the national title. Mm-hmm. And there's going to be games where they lose by 30. And you're like, holy
well, that's
shit.
Just it.
This team is worse than Northwestern.
Walking into this upcoming season may not be the worst thing in the world for this league, but let's face it. The Big Ten is not going to have the expectations that they've had the last 2 years. The Big Ten doesn't have a top 10 team in the country entering the 2022-23 season. They don't have a top 10 team in the country. Mm-hmm. I think Indiana, Michigan, and Purdue, in one way or another, I think that those are probably the three teams that are best in the league heading into next year.
I just feel like Indiana, he's going to have them guarding. He's going to have him guarding, and then you're going to see his versatility in his play calling that you saw. I mean, prior to Kofi.
To me, it comes down to for Indiana, it comes down to Xavier Johnson. What is he going to end up being? For Illinois, it's going to come down to whether or not there is A, consistency, B, some kind of an alpha, and C, like, does that team actually come together? And then for Michigan, like, I don't think we're talking enough about Michigan. If they get Diabate and Caleb Houston back, which, by the way, like, we don't know as of this recording whether or not they're coming back. Like, that team, Hunter Dickinson with Diabate back, Caleb Houston making shots, and they're bringing in the kid from Princeton, Jaylin Llewellyn.
Jaylin thanks for bringing that one up.
Sorry.
Hey, for all that went wrong for that team, for that team, look what they did in the NCAA tournament.
Exactly. This episode of the DTF podcast ran long, so we are breaking it up into 2 parts. Part 2 will be coming to you tomorrow.